Every night is the same, routine, predictable, until it isn't. A tapestry of moonlit hallways, the hushed whispers of night shift nurses, the rhythmic beeping of heart monitors, and the occasional moan of a patient. These are the sounds that accompany my nightly rounds. As a night shift nurse at a local hospital, my world is one of routine, of stability, of predictability. On one such night, a new name was added to my roster, Mr. Smith, room 303. Just another patient, I thought, just another soul in need of care and comfort. Yet as I approached the door to room 303, my heart pounded a little harder. The usual hum of the hospital seemed to fade, replaced by an eerie silence, a sense of unease that I couldn't quite put my finger on. When I entered room 303, a shiver ran down my spine. Something felt off. Mr. Smith lay there, quiet and still, like a statue, giving no response. There was a disconcerting tranquility about him, a stillness that felt unnatural. I tried to interact with him, to break through his silence. "Mr. Smith, can you tell me how you're feeling?" I asked, my voice echoing in the unsettling quiet of room 303. The silence deepened, swallowing my words, as if the room itself was holding its breath. There was no response, not a flicker of an eyelid, not a twitch of a muscle. It was as though he was trapped in his own world, unreachable, unresponsive. Determined to perform my duties, I checked his vitals. His heartbeat was steady, his breathing regular. Everything seemed normal, yet it was anything but. The atmosphere in the room was heavy, a tangible tension hanging in the air. It was as if the room was charged with an energy, a subtle vibration that seeped under your skin, setting your nerves on edge. As I ensured Mr. Smith had everything he needed, the feeling of unease grew. It was like a low hum in the back of my mind, a persistent whisper that something was off. The silence wasn't just silence, it was a shroud, a veil hiding something I couldn't quite grasp. The complaints about room 303 began, whispers of strange noises in the middle of the night. The eerie echoes of shuffling and muttering spilled out into the hushed hospital corridors, originating from the room that was slowly becoming an enigma. Other patients claimed they heard unsettling sounds, their sleep disrupted by the odd symphony emanating from room 303. And every time, it led me back to Mr. Smith. I would enter the room, expecting to find the source of these disturbances. But each visit revealed the same sight, Mr. Smith, lying there, still as ever. His face was a mask of silence, his body a sculpture of stillness. His eyes remained closed, indifferent to my queries and the growing concern. It was as if he was trapped in an eternal slumber, oblivious to the world around him. Yet the murmurs persisted, the whispers grew louder, the complaints escalated. The nocturnal soundtrack of room 303 was becoming a mystery that was impossible to ignore. It was as if the room had a life of its own, a sinister entity that thrived in the dead of the night. As the hours ticked away, my unease transformed into apprehension. The once familiar routine was now punctuated with a sense of dread. The hospital's comforting predictability was replaced with a haunting uncertainty. The usual hum of the hospital was now overshadowed by the disconcerting sounds from room 303. The routine checks, the steady beep of the monitors, the reassuring presence of my colleagues, all faded into the background. All that was left was the chilling enigma of room 303 and its sole occupant, Mr. Smith. His unresponsiveness, the strange noises, the growing unease, everything pointed towards an unsettling truth. Something was amiss, something that was beyond the realm of my understanding. My rational mind battled with the inexplicable events, seeking answers where there were none. Despite the fear gnawing at me, I continued my rounds, my duty outweighing my fear. But with each passing hour, the hospital's reassuring familiarity was replaced with an eerie strangeness. The silence of the night was punctuated by the unexplained occurrences centered around room 303. The tension was mounting, and so was my fear. Then came the symbols, etched on the walls like a chilling message from beyond. I stumbled upon these strange markings, seemingly clawed into the sterile paint of room 303. They were like hieroglyphics, ancient and inexplicable, a language of fear that I couldn't comprehend. I attempted to coax some explanation from Mr. Smith, but he remained as silent as the grave, his eyes closed, oblivious to my inquiries. His silence was deafening, echoing through the room with an eerie resonance that made my skin crawl. Desperate for answers, I reached out to the doctor on duty, but the symbols were as foreign to him as they were to me. His confusion only amplified my dread, and the room seemed to close in around me, the air growing denser with each passing second. The laughter echoed through the hallways, but room 303 was empty. A laughter that seemed to slice through the silence like a razor-sharp blade, chilling to the bone. It was a sound that didn't belong in these sterile hospital halls, especially not in the dead of night. I rushed towards the eerie echo, my heart pounding with an unshakable dread. Upon entering room 303, the chilling emptiness hit me like a gust of cold wind. The room was devoid of life. Mr. Smith was nowhere to be found. The bed was empty, the sheets untouched, as if he had simply vanished into thin air. The strange symbols on the walls seemed to loom larger, casting eerie shadows that danced around the room. I reported the inexplicable disappearance to my superiors, but their dismissive responses only heightened my unease. They suggested that Mr. Smith had perhaps wandered off, a feeble attempt to rationalize the irrational. But I knew better. I knew there was something more, something far darker at play. The laughter, the symbols, the heavy air of room 303, they weren't just random occurrences. They were pieces of a puzzle that defied all logic, a puzzle that I was now inextricably part of. And the most unsettling piece of all was Mr. Smith himself. Was Mr. Smith even real? Or was room 303 a portal to a realm we dare not understand? As I pondered this, the chilling laughter echoed once again, a haunting reminder of the night's terrifying enigma.
A terrifying whisper echoed down the deserted hospital corridors, a sound that should not exist in the realm of the living. This was my reality one night, doing my routine rounds in the hospital. A whisper, soft yet chilling, seemed to slither through the air. At first, I dismissed it as a figment of my tired mind. But as the night wore on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent, a phantom sound that seemed to reverberate from the very walls of the hospital. The hospital, usually a place of healing and care, transformed into a labyrinth of dread under the cloak of darkness. The once familiar hallways felt sinister, the silence punctuated by the eerie whispers. I could almost feel the phantom breath on my neck, sending shivers down my spine. The whispers seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, a spectral presence that continued to haunt me. I tried to shake off the mounting fear, telling myself it was just the exhaustion playing tricks on my mind. But the sense of being watched, of being followed, was too palpable to ignore. Each step I took echoed down the empty corridors, a rhythmic soundtrack to my growing unease. The hospital, once teeming with life, now felt abandoned, almost desolate, save for the chilling whispers that seemed to grow louder with each passing minute. As the night deepened, so did my fear. The whispers were no longer just whispers. They were a siren call, a warning, a haunting melody that seemed to surround me. Every corner I turned, every hallway I traversed, the whispers seemed to grow closer. The sense of dread was so palpable, I could taste it in the air, feel it in the very marrow of my bones. The hospital had become a house of eerie whispers and shadowy corners. I felt like an unwilling participant in a spectral play, the whispers my unwelcome companion. I was trapped in a nightmarish reality, a reality where whispers echoed down deserted corridors and unseen watchers lurked in the shadows. Every corner turned, every hallway traversed, the whispers seemed to grow closer. The hospital had become a chilling orchestra of whispered threats and growing dread. And I, the lone audience, was left to navigate the terrifying symphony of the whispering hallways. In the corner of my eye, a fleeting shadow danced in the darkness, a figment of terror that seemed too real. As the whispers continued their eerie serenade, my mind began to conjure up its own nightmares. A flicker of movement, a phantom silhouette, a shadowy figure that seemed to creep just beyond my line of sight. Each time I turned, hoping to confront my fears, I found nothing but the sterile, unforgiving hospital walls. Perhaps, I thought, the long hours and the relentless pace of hospital life are finally catching up to me. I tried to convince myself that it was nothing more than fatigue playing tricks on my weary mind. But deep down, I knew this was a feeble attempt to rationalize the irrational. I endeavored to focus on my duties, to ground myself in the reality of my work. But the whispers, those insidious whispers, were relentless. Like a chilling wind, they swept through the deserted hallways, their icy touch sending shivers down my spine. The shadows, too, were unyielding. They seemed to grow darker, more menacing, as the night wore on. Each flicker of movement, each hint of a figure lurking in the peripheries of my vision, intensified the gnawing fear gnarled within me. I began to question my sanity. Was I imagining these apparitions? Was it all in my head? The silence of the hospital was oppressive, amplifying my every heartbeat into a deafening roar. The whispers and the shadows were my only companions in this symphony of terror. The scream echoed from a room, a cry of terror that froze the blood in my veins. It was a sound that could chill the soul, a desperate, piercing shriek that seemed to reverberate through the sterile hospital corridors. Without a second thought, I found myself sprinting toward it, my heart pounding in my chest like a drum. As I skidded to a halt outside the patient's room, my breath hitched. The door was ajar. The room bathed in the cold, clinical glow of the fluorescent lights. I pushed the door open, my hands trembling, and stepped inside. The room was empty, not a soul in sight, just an unoccupied bed and the faint hum of the medical equipment. A chill ran down my spine as I grappled with the reality of what I was witnessing. The scream was real, I was sure of it. But there was no one here. The room was a stark reminder of the eerie stillness that had consumed the hospital. The whispers seemed to grow louder, filling the room with an unseen presence. I felt a cold dread creeping into my heart, the whispers now sounding like a chorus of hushed voices, dancing around me. But I was trapped. Walking away from my shift was not an option. I had to continue, despite the terror gnawing at the edges of my sanity. Every second felt like an hour, every minute a lifetime. I went about my duties in a haze of fear, the whispers my constant, unwelcome companions. Each creak of the floorboards, each rustle of the curtains, sent a jolt of terror through me. The hospital, once a symbol of hope and healing, had transformed into a labyrinth of fear. I felt like a mouse in a cat's game, stalked by an unseen predator. As dawn broke, relief washed over me, but the terror of the night was far from over. The whispers lingered, a ghostly reminder of the night's horrors. And as I left the hospital, the echoes of the scream still ringing in my ears, I knew the night's events would haunt me for the rest of my life. As I clocked out, I thought the nightmare was over, but the true horror was yet to reveal itself. Drained and shaken, I made my way home. My own footsteps seemed to echo ominously in the quiet pre-dawn hours, a chilling reminder of the whispers that had haunted me throughout the night. I hoped, prayed even, that the sanctuary of my own home would allow me to forget the events of the evening. Walking through the front door, my senses were immediately assaulted by a familiar yet dreadfully unwelcome sound. The whispers, they were softer but unmistakably present. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I realized the horrifying truth. The whispers hadn't been confined to the hospital. They had followed me. My sanctuary was violated. The terror was not locked away in that hospital. It was with me. The whispers, once confined to the hospital's hallways, now echoed in the confines of my home. A chilling reminder of the terror that had latched onto me. Greetings, dear viewers. Tonight, we venture into the heart of darkness, the abandoned St. Mary's Hospital on the outskirts of town. This forsaken place, shrouded in whispers of hauntings and chilling tales, has been untouched by human hands for many a year. Its once proud facade is now a canvas for time, weathered and worn, with vines creeping up the walls like skeletal fingers reaching out from the grave. Broken windows, like vacant eyes, look out onto a world that has forgotten its existence. Stepping through the hole in the fence, we are greeted by an uncanny silence, a stillness that speaks volumes. The air is heavy with the scent of decay, of stories left untold. The rumors of this place being haunted, they hang in the air, as palpable as the dust we disturb with every step. Armed with nothing but our flashlights, we dared to penetrate the gloom of St. Mary's, little knowing what awaited us. The hospital's air was thick with dust, and the echoes of our footsteps seemed to ripple through the empty hallways. We split up, each of us armed with a flashlight and a sense of morbid curiosity. The hospital was a labyrinth of forgotten rooms and corridors, its secrets shrouded in layers of grime and decay. It was as if the building itself was a living, breathing entity, its silence punctuated by the occasional creaks and groans of settling timber and rusted pipes. As we delved deeper into the bowels of St. Mary's, we were met with a museum of the mundane. Discarded gurneys lay on their sides, their wheels aimlessly spinning in the stale air. Empty patient rooms were filled with abandoned hospital beds, their once white sheets now stained with years of neglect. Old medical equipment, long since stripped of any value, lay scattered across the floors, their purpose forgotten. But the hospital held more than just relics of its past. A scratching sound began to punctuate the stillness, a faint rhythmic rasp that was almost lost amidst the ambient noise of the building. At first I dismissed it as the wind playing tricks, an auditory illusion conjured by the eerie surroundings. However, as I ventured further, the scratching grew louder, more insistent. It was not a figment of my imagination, it was real, and it was coming from somewhere close by. My heart pounded in my chest, adrenaline coursing through my veins as the scratching sound became my sole focus. I followed it, drawn towards the source like a moth to a flame. The scratching led me to a door at the end of a long, deserted corridor. It was a stark contrast to the other doors I'd passed, its paint chipped and weathered, the doorknob tarnished and worn. The scratching was louder here, more desperate, as if something was trapped behind the door, clawing for freedom. And then, in the darkness, I realized something. The scratching wasn't just a sound, it was a voiceless plea, a silent scream echoing through the forsaken halls of St. Mary's S. The scratching grew louder, pulling me towards that door at the end of the deserted corridor. Something was behind it, and it wanted out. Summoning all the courage I could muster, I slowly pushed open the door. What greeted me on the other side will be etched in my memory forever. In the dim, eerie light that filtered through the cracked windows, there was an emaciated figure huddled in the room's corner. Its skin was a ghostly white, stretched taut over its bony frame. The eyes were sunken, hollow pits that seemed to echo with a despair that was far too profound for this world. The sight of it was like a punch to the gut, a grotesque spectacle that sent a wave of revulsion rippling through me. I felt my stomach churn, the taste of fear bitter on my tongue. It was like nothing I'd ever seen, a vision so horrifying it seemed to have clawed its way out of the darkest corners of a nightmare. This wasn't just an ordinary figure, it was a manifestation of pure terror, a chilling embodiment of every horror story I'd ever scoffed at. Its appearance was so ghastly, so horrifically unnatural that it seemed to distort the very air around it, filling the room with a palpable sense of dread. And then, there were those eyes, deep, hollowed sockets that held an emptiness so profound, it was as if they were portals to another realm. They appeared vacant, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that they were watching me, studying me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to escape from this nightmarish encounter, but I was rooted to the spot, ensnared by a terror that was both paralyzing and mesmerizing. The air was thick with a fear that was almost tangible, wrapping around me like a shroud. And then, just as abruptly as it had materialized, the figure vanished. One moment it was there, a horrific apparition in the dim light, and the next, it was gone, swallowed up by the darkness of the room. In an instant, the figure vanished, leaving nothing but a lingering sense of dread in the air. Fear clung to the room, a haunting reminder of the encounter that had just unfolded. It was a chilling echo of the terror that had gripped me, a testament to the horror that was St. Mary's S. I didn't stick around to investigate any further. The terror of St. Mary's had me in its grip, and all I could think of was escape. The adrenaline coursing through my veins propelled me into action, my legs moving almost of their own accord. The echoing footsteps in the empty hallways were now mine, a frantic beat that matched the pounding of my heart. The dim, eerie light of the hospital was replaced by the moon's cold glow as I burst out into the open, gasping for air. The once intriguing facade of the abandoned hospital now took on a sinister aspect, its darkened windows seeming to hold a multitude of secrets. As I sprinted away, I could almost feel the gaze of the hospital, or rather its inhabitant, boring into my back. The once familiar path back to town was now a blur, my mind too consumed with fear to register the details. The aftermath of that night was a whirlwind of sleepless nights and constant paranoia. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind sent a shiver down my spine, the memory of that emaciated figure etched permanently into my mind. I could still feel its hollow eyes on me, a chilling reminder of the terror I'd encountered. Rumors spread around town, whispers of my encounter at St. Mary's S, but none came close to the truth. The old hospital remained as it was, abandoned and silent, its secrets kept hidden within its decaying walls. I steered clear of it, the mere sight enough to send a wave of dread coursing through me. The questions haunted me. What was that figure? Could it have been a patient left behind, or was it something far more sinister, an experiment gone awry perhaps? The possibilities were endless, each more terrifying than the last. Despite the years that have passed, the mystery of St. Mary's continues to haunt me. To this day, the mystery of St. Mary's remains unsolved. Was it an experiment gone wrong, or something far more sinister? I guess we'll never know, but one thing's for certain, I'll never forget the terror of St. Mary S.